First contact in crisis. The Deep Space Patrol vessel Artemis drifted silently through the void between Proxima Centauri and Earth's solar system. Lieutenant Commander Reyna Patel stood at her post on the bridge, her dark eyes fixed on the sensor readings that scrolled endlessly across her holographic display. After 3 months of routine patrols, she had grown accustomed to the quietude of space, which made the sudden blaring of proximity alerts all the more jarring. Unknown vessel detected, bearing 035 Mark 27, announced Lieutenant Jackson from the tactical station. No matching registry in our database, Commander. Reyna straightened, her training taking over. Full scan. Show me what we're dealing with. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a ship unlike anything she'd ever seen. Its hull was composed of what appeared to be overlapping plates, like the scales of some massive celestial fish. But what caught her attention wasn't its alien design. It was the visible damage across its port side, where several of those plates had been torn away, exposing the ship's innards to the vacuum of space. Life signs? Reyna asked, already moving toward the captain's chair. Captain Walsh was on mandatory rest rotation, leaving her in command. Multiple signatures, but they're weak and erratic, Jackson reported. Ma'am, they're not matching any known species patterns. Before Reyna could respond, a transmission cut through their comm system. The universal translator struggled for several seconds before rendering the message in halting English. Help. Children dying. No power. Please. The bridge fell silent. First contact situations were delicate enough without the added complexity of a rescue operation. Standard protocol dictated they should wait for authorization from Earth Command before engaging with an unknown species. But Reyna had joined the Space Navy to help people, not to hide behind regulations while they died. Helm, bring us alongside. Engineering, prepare emergency power transfers. Medical, I want teams standing by in all shuttle bays. She took a deep breath. And someone wake up the captain. The next hour was organized chaos. As they drew closer to the alien vessel, their sensors revealed the full extent of the damage. Whatever had happened to the ship hadn't been an accident. The damage patterns were consistent with weapons fire. The first shuttle returned with survivors, and Reyna got her first look at the Zircari. They were tall, willowy beings with iridescent skin that seemed to shift colors with their movements. But what struck her most were their eyes. 3 of them, arranged in a triangle pattern, each filled with an intelligence and fear that transcended species barriers. I am Cthor, one of them said through the translator, their voice resonating with a musical quality. We're the guardians of the children. Reyna listened as Cthor explained their situation. Their world had been dying, its core becoming unstable. The Zircari had reached out to their allies in the Galactic Council for aid, but help never came. In desperation, they had loaded as many children as they could onto their last functioning colony ship and pulled into unknown space. The Council declared us abandoned, Thor said, their skin darkening to a deep blue of sorrow. They said helping us would strain already limited resources. We became non-persons overnight. More shuttles arrived, bringing more refugees. The ship's medical bay quickly filled with Zircari children, many suffering from radiation exposure and a mysterious illness that their medical staff struggled to understand. Captain Walsh finally arrived on the bridge, looking grave. Commander Patel, Earth Command has responded to our first contact report. We are ordered to maintain distance and await a diplomatic team. Reyna turned from where she had been helping a young Zircari child drink water, their 3 eyes wide with wonder at the simple kindness. Sir, with respect, these people will be dead before diplomats arrive. These aren't humans, Commander. We don't know their intentions, their biology, or their true story. This could be an elaborate trap. Or it could be exactly what it looks like. Reyna countered, gesturing to the child. A desperate people who chose to trust in the kindness of strangers because they had no other choice. The captain was silent for a long moment, studying the scene before him. Finally, he spoke quietly. You understand that continuing to help them could be considered a breach of orders. It could end your career. Reyna looked around the medical bay. She saw her crew members working tirelessly alongside the Zerkari, sharing water and emergency rations, rigging makeshift beds from storage containers, and trying to comfort the frightened children. In those simple acts of compassion, she saw humanity at its finest. "Some things are worth more than a career, sir," she replied. "If we turn our backs on them now, we're no better than the council that abandoned them." Walsh's expression remained stern, but something flickered in his eyes. "I'll need to report this to command." He paused, then added, "It may take me several hours to compose the proper message. I trust you'll continue managing the situation until then." Reyna allowed herself a small smile. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." As the captain left, Reyna turned back to the child she had been helping. They had fallen asleep, their skin now glowing with a soft, peaceful light. Around her, humans and Zerkari worked together, breaking down barriers that had seemed insurmountable just hours ago. She knew there would be consequences for her actions. Earth Command would not be pleased, and the Galactic Council's reaction was anyone's guess. But watching her crew demonstrate the very best of humanity's compassion, Reyna knew she had made the right choice. Sometimes, she reflected, the most important regulations were the unwritten ones, the ones etched into the human heart, calling us to help those in need, regardless of where they came from or what they looked like. The Artemis had set out to patrol the silence between the stars. Instead, they had found something far more valuable, a chance to prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its weapons or its technology, but in its capacity for kindness. And that was worth any price they might have to pay. Breaking protocol. The next 48 hours aboard the Artemis tested every resource and every conviction. Reyna hadn't slept more than 3 hours total, surviving on synthetic caffeine and determination. The ship's corridors, designed for a crew of 200, now housed over 500 Zerkari refugees, their iridescent forms creating ethereal light patterns along the walls. Dr. Priya Sharma, the ship's chief medical officer, cornered Reyna outside the makeshift triage center that had once been the cargo bay. "We have a problem," she said, her usually steady voice trembling slightly. "The children's condition is getting worse. Whatever this illness is, it's not just radiation sickness." Reyna followed the doctor to a row of medical pods where several young Zerkari lay, their normally shimmering skin dulled to a sickly gray. Thor stood nearby, all three eyes closed in what Reyna had learned was their expression of deep distress. "Their life force dims," Thor explained, opening their eyes. "It is as if something is consuming them from within. On our world, we had treatments, but they were lost when we fled." Before Reyna could respond, Lieutenant Jackson's voice came through her comm. "Commander, priority message from Earth Command. Admiral Richardson requests immediate communication." Reyna exchanged glances with Dr. Sharma. They both knew what this meant. "I'll take it in the ready room," she said, then turned to Thor. "We'll find a way to help them. I promise." The Admiral's hologram flickered to life on her desk, his expression stern. "Commander Patel, you have directly violated 3 separate protocols regarding first contact situations. The diplomatic corps is furious, and we're receiving formal protests from the Galactic Council." "Sir, with respect." "I'm not finished," he cut her off. "The Council claims these refugees are criminals who stole restricted medical research before fleeing their quarantine zone. They're demanding we turn them over to Council authorities immediately." Reyna felt her blood run cold. "Sir, there are children dying in our medical bay. Whatever the Council claims, the Council's jurisdiction in this sector is clear, Commander. A Council vessel will arrive in 72 hours to take custody of the refugees. You are ordered to cease all medical intervention and maintain minimal life support only. Is that understood?" Reyna stood straighter. "Request permission to speak freely, sir." The Admiral sighed. "Denied. I know that look, Patel. Your father had the same one when he defied orders to save those colonists on Mars. This is different. This is bigger than one ship or one crew's conscience. The Council is threatening to revoke humanity's probationary trading status. Billions of credits and contracts, Commander. Tens of thousands of jobs. What about our humanity, sir? That will be all, Commander. Comply with the order, or I'll find someone who will. Richardson out. The hologram vanished, leaving Raina alone with her thoughts. She sat heavily in her chair, her father's voice echoing in her memory. Sometimes the right path is the hardest one to walk. A soft chime announced another visitor. Dr. Sharma entered, followed by Cthor and, surprisingly, Captain Walsh. I believe, the captain said carefully, that we're about to experience some equipment malfunctions. Quite unfortunate. The kind that might scramble our communication systems for, the next 72 hours or so. Raina stared at him. Sir. And in the confusion, Dr. Sharma added with a slight smile, some of our experimental medical treatments might get misplaced. Into Zirkari hands, perhaps. Thor's skin rippled with bands of gold. Hope, Raina had learned. The children spoke of you in their dreams, they said. They saw humans coming, wreathed in light, bringing life instead of darkness. We thought it was just fever visions, but now... Don't thank us yet, Raina said, standing. First, we need to figure out what's really causing this illness, and we have less than 72 hours to do it. What followed was a blur of activity. While Lieutenant Jackson orchestrated a series of catastrophic communications failures, Dr. Sharma and her team worked with Zirkari healers, combining their knowledge. They discovered that the children's illness wasn't natural at all. It was engineered, a failsafe built into their own genetic code by the Council scientists. Insurance, Thor explained bitterly, to ensure our compliance. They claimed it was protection against native diseases. We never imagined. The revelation sparked outrage among the crew. Even those who had been hesitant about helping aliens found their resolve hardened by this evidence of calculated cruelty. Human medical technicians worked double shifts alongside Zirkari healers, combining Earth's advanced genetic techniques with the refugees' ancestral knowledge. Captain Walsh maintained plausible deniability, but Raina noticed how supply requisitions for medical materials were approved without question, how security patrols were scheduled to leave certain corridors conveniently unmonitored. By the third day, they had developed a potential treatment. The first trial was on a young Zirkari named Vela, whose 3 eyes had barely opened in days. Raina stood with Cthor, watching as Dr. Sharma administered the treatment, a combination of modified human stem cells and synthesized compounds based on Zirkari traditional medicines. Hours passed. Then, like dawn breaking through storm clouds, color began returning to Vela's skin. Their eyes opened, glowing with renewed strength. The success spread hope through the ship like wildfire. But even as they celebrated, Raina knew they were running out of time. The Council vessel would arrive soon, and no amount of convenient malfunctions could hide the truth of what they'd done. She looked around at her crew, humans and Zirkari working side by side, sharing knowledge, sharing hope, sharing the burden of defiance against injustice. Whatever came next, they had already proven something vital, that humanity's greatest strength lay not in its ability to follow rules, but in its capacity to know when to break them. The question now was, what would that proof cost them? The price of compassion. The Council ship emerged from hyperspace like a predator breaking the surface of dark waters. Its design was all sharp angles and gleaming metal, a stark contrast to the organic curves of the Zirkari vessels still drifting alongside the Artemis. Raina stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back to hide their trembling. "They're hailing us," Lieutenant Jackson reported, his voice tight with tension. Before Raina could respond, 3 figures materialized on the bridge. Council Enforcer-class teleportation, bypassing all standard protocols. Their forms were crystalline, almost geometric in their precision, with faces that seemed carved from living diamond. The Vrel, humanity's first contact species and now the Council's primary peacekeepers. This vessel is now under Council jurisdiction, the lead Vrel announced, its voice like grinding glass. You will surrender the fugitives immediately. Captain Walsh stepped forward. I'm afraid we're experiencing some technical difficulties with our internal transport systems. Perhaps if you followed standard docking procedures. Your attempts at deception are noted. The Vrel interrupted. We have detected the genetic modifications you've made to Council property. This is a Class 1 violation of interstellar law. Property. Reyna couldn't contain herself any longer. They're children. The Vrel turned its crystalline gaze to her. Commander Pottle, your name is already in our records for investigation. The Zircari were a failed experiment in controlled evolution. Their genetic structure belongs to the Council. Their attempt to flee with proprietary research has endangered countless worlds. The only danger here, Dr. Sharma said, stepping onto the bridge with Kithor beside her, is the danger of remaining silent in the face of atrocity. We've documented everything, the engineered illness, the deliberate abandonment, all of it. Kthor's skin pulsed with colors Reyna had never seen before, rage and determination intertwined. Our people agreed to genetic modification to survive on our dying world. We did not agree to become slaves, to have our children turned into weapons. The lead Vrel's surface rippled, the first sign of emotion they'd shown. You understand nothing. The Council uplifts species for the greater good of the galaxy. Sometimes that requires sacrifices. No. The word came from Captain Walsh, quiet but firm. Humanity knows something about sacrifices, about the price of progress. We've made terrible mistakes in our own history. But we've learned that no progress built on the suffering of children can ever be justified. Then you choose to stand against the Council. The Vrel's form crystallized further, becoming weapon-sharp. You would risk everything. Your trade agreements, your colonial rights, your very future among the stars. For these experiments. Reyna stepped forward, standing between the Vrel and Kithor. Around the bridge, she saw her crew members doing the same, forming a human barrier between the enforcers and their charges. We choose to stand for what's right, she said. And we're not alone. As if on cue, new signals appeared on their sensors. Ships dropping out of hyperspace, dozens of them. Merchant vessels, research ships, even a few military craft from various species. On the main screen, messages began pouring in. The Andoran merchant fleet stands with humanity. The free worlds of Proxima offer sanctuary. The scientific coalition recognizes the Zircari's right to self-determination. The Vrel's crystalline forms vibrated with barely contained fury. You've broadcast your actions across the independent networks. Turn this into a spectacle. We broadcast the truth, Dr. Sharma corrected. And truth, it seems, has a power all its own. Kthor stepped forward, their three eyes blazing. For generations, the Council has claimed to act for the greater good while committing atrocities in shadow. Perhaps it is time for that shadow to meet the light. The lead Vrel raised an arm, but before it could act, new alarms blared. On the view screen, a massive ship appeared, unlike anything Reyna had ever seen. Its hull seemed to be made of living light, shifting and flowing like aurora borealis given form. The architects, the Vrel whispered, actual fear creeping into their crystalline voice. A new voice filled the bridge, resonating not through speakers but directly in their minds. The Council's authority is not absolute. We have watched. We have waited. And now, we have seen enough. Reyna felt a hand grasp hers. Thor, their skin glowing with what she now recognized as hope. Around them, human and Zircari stood together, watching as the balance of power that had ruled the galaxy for centuries began to shift. The price of compassion, it seemed, would not be paid in defeat, but in change. And perhaps that had been the true test all along. Echoes of humanity. The weeks following the standoff transformed the Artemis into the center of a diplomatic revolution. The architects, long mythical precursors who had watched galactic civilization develop from afar, had finally broken their silence. Their massive ship remained in orbit, a gleaming reminder that the old order was ending. The Council's grip on power crumbled as more species came forward with their own stories of manipulation and control. The Vrel enforcers were recalled, their crystalline ships vanishing into hyperspace like shattering dreams. But amid the political upheaval, Reyna found herself focused on smaller, more personal victories. In the ship's newly expanded medical bay, she watched as Dr. Sharma worked with healers from a dozen species, sharing the cure they'd developed for the Zircari children. The treatment was being refined, improved by the combined knowledge of multiple civilizations. It was never about jurisdiction or property rights, Thor said, standing beside her. Their skin rippled with thoughtful blues and greens. The Council feared this most of all. Different species working together, sharing knowledge freely. That's why they chose your people, isn't it? Reyna asked. Because of your natural empathy. Thor's three eyes blinked in sequence, their version of a sad smile. They thought they could control it, engineer it into a weapon. They never understood that true empathy cannot be contained or directed. It spreads, like light through darkness. Around them, the Artemis had become a symbol of that truth. The ship's corridors buzzed with beings from across the galaxy, scientists, diplomats, refugees, and volunteers. Species that had never collaborated were now working side by side, inspired by the simple act of humans choosing compassion over protocol. But not everyone embraced the change. Reports came in of hardline Council loyalists arming themselves, of worlds threatening to break away rather than accept the new reality. The price of progress, it seemed, would be paid in more than just political capital. A new dawn. The final confrontation came not with weapons or ships, but in the great council chamber itself. Reyna stood before representatives of 1,000 worlds, her dress uniform pressed and perfect, and told the story of a single choice: to help those in need, regardless of the consequences. Humanity is young, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. We've made countless mistakes. Our history is stained with blood and tears, but we've learned from each failure, grown from each tragedy, and perhaps our greatest lesson has been this: true strength lies not in power over others, but in the power to lift others up. Thor spoke next, their story of the Zircari suffering moving many in the chamber to tears. But it was what came after that truly changed hearts and minds. One by one, representatives from different species rose to share their own stories of council manipulation, of regulated progress that had cost them their autonomy, their culture, their very identity. The architects, speaking through their shimmering ambassadors, revealed the truth they had watched unfold over millennia, that diversity, not uniformity, was the key to galactic survival. That compassion, not control, would light the way forward. In the end, the Council was not abolished but transformed. New laws were written, emphasizing cooperation over control, protecting the rights of all sentient beings to choose their own path of development. The Zircari were recognized as a free people, their genetic innovations now shared openly with any who needed them. On the Artemis observation deck, Reyna stood with her crew, watching the sun rise over Earth. Thor joined them, accompanied by Vila and other Zircari children, their skin glowing with health and hope. What happens now? Lieutenant Jackson asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Now, Captain Walsh said, we do what humanity does best. We adapt. We grow. We reach out to those different from us and find the common ground between the stars. Reyna looked at her reflection in the viewport, seeing not just herself but the legacy she and her crew had helped create. They had proven that humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy wasn't their technology or their military might, but their capacity for compassion, their willingness to stand up for what was right, their ability to see beyond differences to the shared spirit that united all living beings. Now, she said, watching Earth turn beneath them, blue and beautiful and full of promise, we build something new. together. The Artemis had set out to patrol the darkness between worlds. Instead, they had helped light a beacon that would guide galactic civilization toward a brighter future. It wasn't the end of their story, it was just the beginning. As if in response to that thought, a message flashed across their communications panel. New orders, directing the Artemis to head deeper into unexplored space, to seek out other species who might have suffered under the old Council's rule, to offer help, hope, and a hand extended in friendship. Reyna smiled. They had changed the galaxy by saving one species. Who knew what other wonders awaited them among the stars? Helm, she said, set course for the unknown. Let's see what other miracles we can find out there. The Artemis turned gracefully, its hull gleaming in the sunlight, and moved toward the infinite horizon of space. Behind it, Earth continued its eternal dance around the sun, but it was different now. No longer just humanity's cradle, but a symbol of hope for countless species across the galaxy. The void between stars wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with possibility, with potential, with the promise that wherever there was darkness, light would follow. All it took was the courage to reach out, to care, to stand for what was right. That was humanity's true gift to the galaxy, and it was just the beginning. The end.